Will there soon be peace in the Middle East, at least in the war between Israel and Hamas? Hi, I'm Brian Lilley, political columnist with the Toronto Sun. President Donald Trump unveiled his peace plan for the Middle East region on Monday. He did it while standing beside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, this was not a peace deal that Israel was part of negotiating. The United States negotiated this with a series of Arab states in the region and then presented it to Israel and said, here's what we want you to sign. Israel signed on. Hamas, well, we're still waiting. But one thing that has been made clear is that if Hamas says no, Donald Trump has made it clear that Israel can go in and finish the job.
I think we should understand that we're giving everybody a chance to have this done peacefully, something that will achieve all our war objectives without any further bloodshed. But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself.
And while Hamas drags its feet in responding to this peace plan, well, we've got different people saying different things of what they will do, but Trump made it clear on Tuesday they don't have forever to accept this. It's got to come soon, yes or no.
How long do you plan to give Hamas to respond to the ceasefire proposal you put out?
Well, we're going to do about 3 or 4 days. We'll see how it is. All of the Arab countries are signed up. The Muslim countries are all signed up. Israel's all signed up. We're just waiting for Hamas. And Hamas is either going to be doing it or not. And if it's not, it's going to be a very sad end.
All right, to help us understand this further, joined by Eylon Levy. He is a political commentator, former spokesperson for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and someone who has been living through the hell of this war for the last 2 years. Eylon, as you and I sit here talking, it's about 3:30 in the afternoon, Tel Aviv time, and the world is sitting waiting for an answer from Hamas. It could come soon. If I read what sources are telling CBS News in the United States, they cite Hamas sources saying they are likely to accept the terms of the peace deal. If you listen to sources from BBC, they say they are unlikely to accept the peace deal. And then you've got Sheikh Mohammed, the Prime Minister of Qatar, saying you should accept the peace deal. So what do we read into this?
Hamas certainly doesn't want to accept this deal to end this war because it's not a deal for a ceasefire that lets it catch its breath for the next war. It's a plan to end the war, a plan that requires it to free all the hostages, give them up as insurance, a plan that requires it to disarm, to be removed from power. And that means that this is a proposal for Hamas's terms of surrender. That's where we're at. Hamas has lost this war. And the only thing that's left is for Hamas to accept that it's lost this war. So Hamas doesn't want to agree, but it has a problem because it doesn't want to say no either. Because President Trump has said that if Hamas says no to the deal, then Israel has the US's full backing to finish the job. You know, Netanyahu said, we'd rather do it the easy way, but you can have it the hard way if you want, if we have no choice but to remove you by force. So I think the most likely thing is that Hamas is going to come back with an answer that it wants to discuss this, that it wants to quibble over certain clauses, just like it's been dragging out the ransom negotiations for the hostages over the last 2 years, all in an attempt to buy time. And that means that what we need now is global pressure on Hamas and its patrons, specifically Qatar. Qatar, which has been pressuring Israel to pay a ransom that would leave Hamas in power. Qatar that now seems to be intervening on Hamas's behalf and saying, actually, we have a problem with a few of the clauses. Enough is enough. The war that Hamas started 2 years ago needs to end. And it needs to end with all the hostages home and with Hamas dismantled so it can never threaten Israel again and drag the Middle East into another regional war.
We do hit the 2-week mark of the anniversary a week from today. It's shocking and saddening that the war has gone on as long as it has, that the hostages remain there. But throughout this, we've seen pressure from Western leaders, not on Hamas, not on Qatar, but on Israel. And we saw that with our Prime Minister, Mark Carney, joining Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Anthony Albanese, all these other world leaders who said that they would recognize a Palestinian state, which Hamas itself has said is a reward, a fruit of October 7th. Do you expect these leaders now, who all ran to X to post social media, blasts that, oh, we welcome this peace plan. This is the peace plan they've been undermining. Do you expect them to turn around and now put pressure on Hamas?
Brian, the tragedy of Western leaders' grandstanding has been that pressure on Israel to end this war has encouraged Hamas to prolong this war. Hamas explains that it feels vindicated in its decision to launch this war because of the way it's trashed Israel's global reputation, because of the recognition of a non-existent Palestinian state that is vindicating Hamas's decision to go to war. And so these leaders have been playing a very destructive role, despite their rhetoric about wanting to bring peace. You know, there's a myth that Israel enjoyed universal support after the horrors of the October 7th massacre. It was in October 2023 that the General Assembly first called for a ceasefire, and the pressure has been put on the wrong place ever since. The pressure from the beginning should have been on the terrorist army that launched this war to end it. And now Hamas does not want to end this war. And here's the question that Western leaders need to be asking. When they say Hamas must accept this deal, what is the or else? Because if Hamas comes back and says no to this deal, Western leaders cannot fall back on the default of pressuring Israel to end this war anyway, even if it means abandoning the hostages, even if it means leaving Hamas in power when we know that starts the clock ticking to the next war. If Hamas does not say yes by the weekend, world leaders must say we stand squarely behind Israel in its efforts to remove Hamas from power and return the hostages by force. Hamas has been given every opportunity. It's been offered generous ransoms to free the hostages and end this war. It doesn't want to. It can choose the easy way, or Israel is going to finish it the hard way. But they need to come out with a clear statement of solidarity with Israel, because if they do not, if world leaders allow Hamas to snub the president of the United States, when even President Macron says Hamas has no choice but to accept it, then this war will never end, because Hamas will understand that if there's no pressure on it now, there never will be pressure, and it can get away with this barbaric war forever and ever.
And meanwhile, the suffering of Gazans will continue as they're used as human shields and, public relations attempts to sway support behind Hamas. Let's say they do accept, though. Part of this agreement, a major part, is the disarming of the Gaza Strip, the de-radicalization. Those terms sound nice. They also sound extremely difficult.
You're right. There are many questions about how this deal will be implemented, because it effectively requires Hamas to dismantle itself under international supervision. Now, in Israel, there's very little trust in international peacekeepers. We saw what happened in Lebanon, a peacekeeping force that was meant to keep southern Lebanon demilitarized, and they didn't. Hezbollah built a terrorist army of 150,000 rockets right under their noses, so there is very little trust in...
In Canada, I'm ashamed to say that Canadian troops were part of that and turned a blind eye to what was going on with Hezbollah and did nothing to stop it.
And with all due respect to Canada, the peacekeeping force was entirely useless. So there are many questions about what that implementation is going to look like inside Gaza. But what matters, according to this deal, the first thing that happens is that the hostages come home. And it is so important that President Trump is saying the hostages must come home immediately and in one go, because we had previous proposals for a ceasefire that required Hamas to give half of the hostages, some of the hostages, let them keep them as bargaining chips for phase 2, phase 2.5, phase 3 of the ceasefire, and world leaders were pressuring Israel to go along with a deal that allowed Hamas to use those hostages as bargaining chips. And now President Trump is saying they have to all come out in one go. You cannot continue starving and torturing hostages and using them as insurance to survive the war that you started. So the first thing that happens is an immediate end to the fighting. All the hostages come out, and then the IDF withdrawal from Gaza would be in accordance with the demilitarization and dismantling of Hamas. But if that ends up falling down the line because Hamas decides it doesn't want to implement the deal after all, it's not going to dismantle itself, at least the hostages will be home safe with their families, and those who were already murdered in captivity, at least their families will have had the dignity of a burial.
What is the mood in Israel since this deal was announced on Monday? I know there's been constant tension between those that just want the hostages home and they don't care what happens after that. And then others that say now is the time, the job to eliminate Hamas must be finished. Prime Minister Netanyahu has faced a bumpy road since October 7th, 2023. He's been up at times, he's been down at times. The public mood has shifted back and forth. Where is it now after this peace agreement was announced by President Trump and accepted by Prime Minister Netanyahu just days ago?
Well, let's remember, this is the longest war in Israel's history. This has been going on for 2 years. And it's not just a war in Gaza. It's a regional war on 7 fronts in which Israel has been attacked by the Iranian regime and its proxy armies. The Houthis from Yemen woke up everyone in the greater Tel Aviv area 2 nights ago with a ballistic missile at 1 o'clock in the morning. They hit the southern port city of Eilat with 3 drones in the space of the last month. For Israelis, this has been exhausting. They want this war to end. But of course, they want this war to end in a way that ensures that we're not just starting the clock ticking towards the next war. And of course, everyone is anxious about getting the hostages back. And the more hawkish hostage families, those who are not saying, pay whatever ransom, make whatever deal, get them back home now, those who said you need to do this through military pressure, are welcoming President Trump's proposal and saying this is exactly how it should be done. So Israelis are optimistic that this could be forced through. We're seeing positive signals that Qatar and Turkey seem to be putting a little bit of pressure on Hamas to accept the deal. But really, it will depend on that. It will depend on whether Hamas's state sponsors, Qatar and Turkey, have really decided that it's game over and they want this war to end, or if they're content with letting Hamas drag out this war any longer. So we've heard proposals before. Some of them have collapsed, so Israelis know not to let their hopes get up too high. But definitely there is hope that the longest war in Israel's history could be winding down to its conclusion.
Okay, final point, assume that Hamas accepts this and things go well. I mean, that is the hope for all of us. You mentioned the Houthis. There's still these other fronts on the wars. Is Hezbollah effectively disarmed at the moment? What about the Houthis and what about Iran?
That's a very important question. I think one of the big misunderstandings about October 7th was that it was just a terror attack. It wasn't. It was the opening shot of a regional war. Hamas expected that by launching those barbaric atrocities on October 7th, it was going to drag Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iran, Palestinians in the West Bank into an orgy of violence against Israel that would ultimately destroy the country. That was the plan, and people don't understand it when they think that October 7th was just a terror attack. So even if this agreement to end the war on the Gaza front is accepted, it doesn't mean that peace is going to break out all throughout the Middle East. It leaves the Houthis, whose slogan is death to Israel, curses on the Jews, still standing. Iran is now licking its wounds with the snapback sanctions and wanting to rebuild its nuclear program. The Hezbollah in Lebanon is not going quietly into the night, even though the Lebanese government says it is now trying to dismantle it and take over all military forces in the area. This isn't over, but where I am optimistic is that if the war in Gaza can end, then we can go back on track to regional normalization between Israel and the moderate Arab countries. Hamas launched this war 2 years ago because it thought that Israel was on the cusp of a normalization agreement with Saudi Arabia. They did this to foil regional peace. And I hope that if this war comes to an end, we can get back on track, normalizing relations, making peace between Israel and Arab countries in the region. And those countries also have an interest in containing the Iranian regime and its proxies. And if we get peace and normalization agreements, that would be the ultimate triumph after this war. And it would be a huge asset to contain the Iranian regime and its aggression even further.
Eylon, thanks once again for your time and your insights, and all the best in the coming days. Let's hope that there is a good outcome from this. Let us know what you think. Drop a comment down below. Share this on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.